So I'm assuming that you clicked on this video either because you're one of my subscribers or you probably typed this into the search engine and you wanted to know what are the signs that somebody's on drugs, because you just don't know. Now this could be a family member that you're worried about, or the weirdo down the street that's growling at people and you're like, whoa, is it drugs? Is it mental illness? So I thought what I would do is I would go ahead and I would break down all of the kinds of drugs that there are and the symptoms that you have when you're on those drugs, and things to kind of be aware of when it comes to finding out if a family member has an addiction. Okay, the first one is marijuana. And I think that that's a pretty basic one. I would say anybody who uses YouTube is probably, I don't know, was probably around in the 60s when it kind of got a little bit heavier, so to say. But I feel like this is pretty much self-explanatory. If you smell something that smells like skunk, probably weed. If you're concerned that your teenager is smoking marijuana, then I would, not that I know from personal experience of being a teenager or anything, but if your kid's room always smells like incense or always smells like dryer sheets, that could be one. If you're finding toilet paper rolls in their room, that could be another sign that they're on drugs. If their eyes are really bloodshot, they laugh a lot, their eyes are low, they're eating a lot, they're drinking water a lot, I'm probably going to say they're probably stoned, and you should probably talk to them about that. Little things that are a little bit harder to realize are if parts of your metal screens that go on windows, if you have the legit metal ones, if part of those are gone, probably in a corner, so to say, it's kind of a sign. When you smoke weed out of a pipe, you need a screen. So I would say those are pretty much, you know, some of the basic things. If you smell skunky stuff, again, probably marijuana. Also, hookahs can be bongs. I may have turned a hookah into a bong at some point. I don't know. I can't neither confirm or deny that. The next one, I am not so well versed in. Actually, I'm not well versed in any of the rest of them when it comes to personal experience. But the next one is wax, earwax. It's more or less very, 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 very potent THC, which comes from the marijuana plant, and they use butane to extract that. And when you're going to be smoking it, you're going to want to smoke it out of a vaporizer because it heats to a perfect 350 degrees and it more or less turns into a vapor, and you can inhale it better, which they say is less chemicals. I saw someone making this once, and as soon as I saw the butane and the process, I was like, this is a little too close to meth for me, so I'm gonna just not smoke that. Like, I'm good. Okay, let's move on to hallucinogens. Now, hallucinogens are broken up into 3 different categories. You have psychedelics, dissociatives, and then you have deliriants. Psychedelics are going to include LSD, mushrooms, peyote, and mescaline. Now, signs that somebody is high on LSD are going to be increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, nausea, vomiting. Clearly, hallucinations is going to be a big one. Dilated pupils. Your pupils can get almost completely black. I've seen a couple of people high on LSD and it was scary. Restlessness, poor coordination, tripping a lot, increase in body temperature. You don't really get hungry because you're just so high. You're probably talking about the crap that you're seeing, and everybody around you who's sober is like, yeah, you're really high. Poor judgment. I've noticed a lot of people who do LSD immediately think they can fly, and that's actually in turn had multiple people jump off of buildings, which is scary. Anxiety attacks, a distorted sense of time is a huge one. They don't know that it's only been 30 seconds. They think they've been in their high for like years. They're highly emotional and super empathetic at the time. Memory loss is a huge one. A lot of people that drop LSD a lot are a little harder to talk to, so to say. They're a little flat, I guess is a good way to say. Like, they just feel like they don't have emotion. They just kind of exist. Inability to concentrate. I knew somebody who did LSD and the next day they had to teach themselves how to do everything. They just sat there and they were like, what do I do? And like, they had to relearn how to brush their teeth. Like, something happened and they got all fried. People have talked about their body feeling like it was disintegrating. People have talked about how they were melting and they knew they were melting, but they were sitting there just fine. And there's a lot of like back and forth, like first they're happy, then they're sad, then they're happy, then they're sad, and then they're angry. And it's just, it's a lot to witness, especially being sober. And to think that a lot of people did this stuff together. I couldn't imagine like 6 people high on LSD. That's a scary thought. At least, you know, when the idiots I was hanging out with, they were like, Jasmine, do you want to be the sober person? I'm like, yeah. And so I kind of watch them and keep them from doing dumb stuff. But it's a scary thought to think. I don't know why anybody would want to do that to themselves. Like, to me, every time that they did it, they were in a really scary spot. They were talking about like seeing all these things. And I'm like, why do you keep doing it? That just sounds scary. Why would you want to be scared all the time? Uses of peyote. I have never known anybody who's used peyote, but these are going to be the symptoms. A sense of euphoria, changes in personality during the high, dilated pupils once again, increased or loss of hunger. It can kind of go either way depending on, I guess, like the kind of peyote that you smoke. An increased heart rate to the point that some people like have heart palpitations. Distorted perceptions of things that are happening, also an increased heart rate. Hypothermia, impaired motor skills. A lot of time there's drooling that happens. There's people have had accidents, they've peed themselves or they've pooped themselves. Nausea, vomiting, stomach pain, increased blood pressure. I don't think it's ever gotten somebody's blood pressure so high that they had a stroke, but it's a scary thought to think that if somebody already had naturally high, or if somebody already had high blood pressure, they weren't aware of it and they weren't on medication, and then they did peyote and their blood pressure got so high that they had a stroke, like, and then they wouldn't know, like, is this person high on peyote or did they just have a stroke? It's a scary thought to think about. Rapid breathing is another one. And then Masalan use is going to be nausea and vomiting once again. Shaking hands and feet, and it's not like shaking, but it's like, you know, like you have tremors in your body almost. Colorful hallucinations that last for hours. You can, if somebody talks, you can almost see the colors of their words from what people have described to me. I don't know, I've never done it. They have a sense that they're floating or they're flying through space, a sense of being super, super lightweight. Again, panic attacks, you could have a bad trip and then just start seeing scary stuff. Sweating, a lot of sweating, there's dizziness, exaggerated emotions, no matter what it is, you feel it 10 times more, almost like an ecstasy type deal. Like everything is just so intense. Rapid mood swings is another one. There's that false feeling of power and safety. And I think that goes back with the whole LSD thing of people thinking that they can fly when they can't, and they're jumping off of buildings and stuff or jumping out of windows. And then there's a lot of confusion, obviously. And then I think now we're going to go ahead and move into uppers. And uppers would consist of like methamphetamine, different kind of pills that have the methamphetamine in it, cocaine, crack cocaine, those kind of things. Now this I'm kind of an expert in only because everybody around me, parents, a sibling of mine, multiple friends, all of them did meth, and they were all what I would call them a tweaker. And so I have a lot of experience looking in on it. I mean, I've never done it myself, but to be able to kind of like watch it, I got info for you. And I forgot to add also there's MDMA, that is ecstasy. That's also considered an upper. Symptoms of meth is you do not sleep. And when I say you do not sleep, you don't sleep for days at a time. I think one time my parents went on a bender, they were up for 2 freaking weeks, and they were having complete hallucinations. They were messed up. They were in complete psychosis at that point. And then when they did crash, they crashed for like 3 days. And a lot of people who do meth, you see them up for days at a time, and then they just crash for like 3 days. Loss of appetite is a huge one. There is like no eating to be done unless it's sugar, and sugar usually, like when they start craving the sugar, it's because they're starting to come down. And so if you see, and you know, you're noticing a family member and they're getting skinnier and skinnier and they're up for longer periods of time, and then you notice that they eat mass amounts of sugar and then go to sleep, it's because they're coming down and their body is craving that sugar because they're dehydrated, because they don't drink water at all. You forget. My sister didn't even know that she was up for 3 days. Like, she thought that it was just a couple hours, and I had went to work 3 different times, and she was like, didn't believe me. And I'm like, no, really, you've been up for 3 days. Like, you lose a sense of time, so you wouldn't think, oh, I should be drinking water. I should be eating. Not to mention, you're so hyper that you're not thinking of doing that. Your body isn't hungry. Also, a lot of moving. There's a lot of, the reason I think a tweaker kind of came about is because, there's like, there's a lot of movement, if that makes sense, and a lot of like hand movement. And also, they throw themselves into like weird projects. I saw a friend and he painted a whole regular light bulb, like like a regular round light bulb. You get what I'm saying. He colored it with a pin, just like a regular black ball pin. And by the time he was done with it, it was completely black. It looked like he had dipped it in black paint, shiny black paint. But they throw themselves into weird projects like that. You see them taking things apart. You see them like deep cleaning the house and they're like scrubbing floorboards with a toothbrush or raking carpet. Like, there's weird stuff that they do. Physical signs also are a runny nose. If they went ahead and they snorted it, you'll hear them go all the time, like, I guess, if that makes sense. And it's called a drip, and they can feel it. And a lot of times if somebody is an ex-drug addict and you mention the word methamphetamines or tweak or whatever they used to call it, they will instantly, their nose will start running. It's a trigger in their brain. It's an interesting thing. I have some friends who are ex-drug addicts, and as soon as you say that, they instantly get the drip, and it's the weirdest thing to see, and they all say it. A huge one is dilated pupils, and when I say dilated, I mean you could have colored eyes and you don't know that. They are completely jet black. My family members who have the prettiest ice blue eyes, they look like a husky's, and you wouldn't be able to tell. They look like they had naturally black eyes because their pupils are that big, and it's the scariest thing to see. Fast talking is another one, and jumping from one subject to another subject, and just the mania is a huge one. They're very manic, very fidgety, can't hold still, can't hold a conversation. They are really paranoid, skeptical of everyone around them. They think everybody's out to get them. They think that, like, they could be in a store and they could look at you and they're going to think that you're one of those people that are after them, and they're going to get crazy with you. Like, they're just very unpredictable people. And also, depending on how it's used, there could also be razor blades, needles, spoons, cotton, scraps of material that they use to hold or to cut off the blood supply to their arm so that they can inject, because you can either smoke it, you can inject it, or you can snort it. And I will show you what a meth pipe looks like versus a crack pipe. So this right here is a meth pipe. As you can see, it's long and it has like that tube at the end of it, but in a crack pipe, it's just a straight glass piece like this. Another one that you can kind of tell is there'll be track marks if somebody's injecting it, and it seems like the more you use it, the more you age. There's some people that are in HIMIT that use it and you wouldn't believe that they're only in their 30s. They honestly look like they're 60. Loss of teeth is a huge one. It just rots away at your teeth. It's terrible for your teeth. A lot of people hallucinate and think that there are bugs under their skin, and so then they start picking at them, and that's why you would see like people that are on meth and they're on a really good one and they're really bad addicts. They have a lot of like things because they pick all the time.